people make their own history, just in circumstances not of their choosing. And I think the Corbyn movement that came together at that time was really a response to the dominant economic ideology of the day, call it Thatcherism or neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, which had crashed in 2008 with the financial crash and had been unable to really reconstitute itself. And I think that transformed the terrain of politics. I describe it in the book as like an earthquake which rattles the buildings above, but it doesn't quite bring them down. We're still surrounded by all the same power structures, but they're teetering. They're not as they're more vulnerable than they used to be, and we're living in quite a precarious historical moment. I think when you're trying to understand what the Corbyn movement is, it probably helps to understand where it came from. So I'll just run through this briefly. I'll go into it in a lot more detail, obviously, but I think there are really three tributaries which flowed into the Corbyn movement in 2015. One ran through the party, one through the trade unions, and one through the kind of broader left. They all took their own path, but they were all really a response to that economic crash. In the party, the members had turned quite sharply against New Labour, and I think that's important because there's this myth that's been perpetuated ever since that in 2015 the Labour Party was done over by outsiders, that all these new people came flooding in and kind of stole the party from the existing members. The data, the evidence doesn't really support that. When the Corbyn campaign started phone canvassing members of the Labour Party, they thought they were freakishly phoning up every single Corbyn supporter in the party because they were getting such a great response. Corbyn moved into the lead in nominations by constituency parties, decided by people who go to meetings, who tend to be long-term members. 1 month into the race, he moved ahead. And this was before the first YouGov opinion poll came out showing Corbyn was in the lead. This was a time when 95% of the population had never heard of Jeremy Corbyn and there was no real hype about him, but he was already basically in the lead, although under the radar at the time, within the Labour Party membership itself. The second tributary went through the unions, and that's a longer process. I think that's more of a 15-year shift to the left, and I think that really comes from the way that Margaret Thatcher kicked the unions out of their previous economic role in the economy. After the Second World War, the unions had a seat at the table of the running of British industry. They were kind of part of capitalism, if you like, integrated into it. And then Thatcher came along and booted them out of that. And that had political repercussions. It took a while to be felt, but basically the lack of their economic role meant that they were freer to act in different ways politically. And eventually that meant they came to a position where in 2015 the big unions like Unite and Unison and the CWU were willing to nominate somebody like Jeremy Corbyn for leader, which was a big departure for them because unions are generally very cautious organisations, especially in the realm of Labour politics. The third tributary from the broad left, that's really the movement activists, the non-Labour Party members, the kind of various causes of the left, and especially from 2010 to 2015 the anti-austerity movement, which was really the dynamic element in that movement. And the important thing really there was that the Corbyn campaign reached out to these people. It tried this new system of you can vote for £3 had been brought in, an idea which was completely a Blairite idea. It was their project, but it was actually Jeremy Corbyn's campaign that said, well, we can use this, we can appeal to all these people who go on demos and so on, and we can get them to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. And actually, Liz Kendall tried it a little bit in 2015, but not very much. The other candidates really just ignored this scheme. And I think that kind of foreshadows what happened in 2017, where Labour was again trying to reach non-voters. The fact that we can trace those tributaries to the Corbyn movement, the fact that the Corbyn phenomenon didn't come from nowhere, I think is important. It means it wasn't a fluke what happened in the Labour Party, and it means there's more potential, hopefully, from it. When the economic orthodoxy can no longer deliver, I think political turbulence follows. That doesn't mean the left or Labour is necessarily going to win, but it means that there's an opportunity there to be seized. We've seen over the last 2 years since Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader that it wasn't enough just to get him in that position. His position had to be constantly defended, and it won't be enough either to get him Prime Minister. If Jeremy Corbyn is elected Prime Minister, there will be huge resistance, and it will require even bigger mobilisations both within the party and outside the party if that Labour government is going to be a success. But still, when historical opportunities come along, there's not much choice really. You don't get a choice of whether to bother or not. You have to seize them when you can.